History is not always written in ink. Sometimes it is etched in ash, the fine gray residue of a world that burned, a world that was given everything in the desperate gamble for its survival. We speak of the Great Sundering, the conflict that saw the ancient world of Viridia tear itself apart. But the true story, the lesson, lies not in the roar of the final battles, but in the silence that followed. This is the tale of the echoes of the New World, the long-term reverberations of a single, agonizing sacrifice, and the enduring fate of the three characters whose choices determined everything. This is a story of cost, consequence, and the fragile nature of a future built upon the bones of the past. The war, fueled by the terrifying power of Aether Tech, had pitted the technologically advanced Republic of Aethel against the magically potent sovereignty of Eldoria. Aethel sought to harness the elemental forces. Eldoria sought to preserve their sanctity. The conflict was a paradox of escalation. The more powerful the weapons, the more absolute the destruction. And when the dust settled, the victory was hollow. The Aethelan capital was a smoking crater. Eldoria's great tree was reduced to a petrified stump. The immediate threat, a rogue Aether-tech weapon capable of destabilizing the planetary core, known simply as the World Ender, had been neutralized, but at a price that would define a generation. The year is 50 AS, after Sundering. The new world had begun, whether its inhabitants were ready or not. The Three Legacies. Our story centers on three figures who stepped out of the blinding light of the final conflict and into the perpetual twilight of its aftermath. Each bore the scar of the war and the burden of its resolution. 1. Caelan, the Shield of Penance. Caelan was once Archon of the Aethelan Guard, a general who oversaw the deployment of the very weapons that scorched the earth. He was not a villain, merely a man who believed in the necessity of extreme measures. His last desperate act was not of conquest, but of penance. The World Ender required a simultaneous, localized, magical and technological overload to be safely nullified. Caelan had provided the technology. He had built the machine that would draw off the explosive power, but the man who was meant to activate it, his own brother, had fallen. In the final, chaotic moments, Caelan made a choice that haunts his every waking moment. He diverted the power surge into the capital's central defense grid, buying the Eldorians the vital seconds they needed for their ritual. The cost, the grid, and everyone within a mile of its epicenter, including his own family, was atomized. 50 years later, Caelan is no longer a general, but a custodian. His mission is simple: rebuilding. He heads the Iron Oath, a secular community composed of Aethelan engineers, Eldorian mages, and the newborn, those who never knew the war. They live in a salvaged city, dubbed Echo Prime, and Caelan's only law is utility and humility. He enforces harsh rationing and backbreaking work, driven not by malice, but by the deeply held belief that a new world must be earned through relentless physical labor. His is the echo of responsibility. The man who destroyed his world must stone by heavy stone build the next. 2. Lyra, the Keeper of the Flame. Lyra represented the purity and power of Eldoria. She was a chanter of the root, one of the last apprentices to the great archdruid. Her role in the final sacrifice was the magical anchor. As Caelan's technology drew off the destructive Aether-tech energy, Lyra, then only a girl of 15, channeled the necessary counter-harmonic ritual, a wave of life magic that stabilized the planet's core. The power of that life magic, however, was not infinite. To complete the ritual, the Archdruid and the remaining chanters had to transfuse their life force into Lyra. She survived, but she became a living repository of thousands of ancient souls, a vessel of unimaginable grief.
Lyra now leads the Viridian Consensus, a community dedicated to the preservation of ancient knowledge and the gentle reintroduction of magic. Unlike Kaelin, she does not seek to dominate the land with construction, but to heal it with cultivation. Her people live in nomadic circles, tending to the seed vaults and the slow-growing Viridia sprout, a magically resilient tree she coaxed from the ashes of the great tree. Lyra struggles daily. The echoes, the voices of the ancient dead, are a constant chorus in her mind. Her challenge is to distinguish the wisdom of the past from the paralysis of grief. Lyra's echo is hope. It is a quiet, difficult hope, a small flame shielded from the wind by the weight of the Archdruid's collective spirit. 3. Zane, the spirit of the Scorch. And then there is Zane. Neither an Archon nor a Chanter, Zane was a scavenger, a street urchin who survived by knowing the secret paths and discarded resources of the ruined cities. During the final moments, Zane wasn't fighting for a cause. He was fighting for food. He stumbled upon the site of the sacrifice, not in time to help, but in time to witness the blast. He was caught in the periphery of the overload, the fringe where raw aether-tech energy met unchanneled life magic. This convergence didn't kill him. It changed him. He became one of the Scarred, a small group of survivors who gained a unique, volatile ability to manipulate the residual energy that permeated the ash-choked air. He can pull residual power from the ruins themselves, a dangerous, unpredictable gift. Zane now commands the Outriders, a fiercely independent collective of the Scarred and the disenfranchised. They live by a ruthless, yet strangely ethical code. Survival is the only true philosophy. They don't rebuild or heal. They harvest the remnants of the old world, broken machines, fused crystals, unexploded energy cores. They are the essential middle layer, providing resources to both Kaelin's custodians and Lyra's consensus, but demanding a heavy, non-negotiable price in return. Zane's echo is realism. He is the mirror to the new world, reflecting its necessary ruthlessness, its reliance on what is broken, and its fundamental lack of pity.
Kaelin survived, but he was forever changed. Zane's death freed him from the suffocating burden of his war guilt. He learned the lesson of the Athelan hubris, that technological security must be built with natural harmony, not against it. He now leads the Covenant of the Forge, a merged society of engineers and mages. His custodians no longer dominate the land, they serve it, engineering solutions for sustainable living, solar collection, hydro purification, and wind harnessing. He never completed the Aether Shield blueprints. He keeps them locked away, not as a goal, but as a perpetual warning, a memory of the power that broke the world. Kaelin's legacy, the principle of humble innovation. Build small, build slow, and build to last. Lyra, the quiet healer. Lyra, relieved of the pressure to make the ultimate sacrifice, was finally able to rest. The chaotic energy had been contained, the echoes quieted. She planted the Viridia sprout, and its gentle burgeoning life magic began to spread, slowly purifying the earth. She now leads the Keepers of the Grove. They are no longer nomads, but stationary stewards of the growing forest. Her mission is teaching the newborn the ancient lost arts of nature and patience. She tells them stories of the two men who had fought to define the new world, the builder and the pragmatist, and emphasizes that neither was fully right, but both were necessary. Lyra's legacy, the principle of perpetual healing. The greatest power is the power to wait. Zane, the immortal scavenger. Zane's story became a legend, an unlikely epic among the cynical youth of the new world. He was the scavenger who saved the world by giving up the one thing he loved, his freedom from cause.
His outriders, now led by a young, scarred woman named Astra, reformed into the Iron Path, a vital core of resource experts. They still scavenge, but their purpose changed. They now focus on collecting the most volatile aether tech materials, not for profit, but to deliver them to Kalen for safe, permanent storage. They are the guardians of the world's most dangerous secrets, living by Zane's final, silent oath of necessary selflessness. Zane's legacy, the principle of realized purpose. The deepest truth is found only when you stop fighting for yourself. Echoes of the New World. Final shot. The sun, now a true golden color, sets over the growing forest and the humble yet stable city built beside it. The New World did not end with a decisive victory, nor with a singular, beautiful sacrifice. It ended with a solution born of compromise, a difficult convergence of three opposing ideals: Kalen's duty, Lyra's hope, and Zane's reality. The story of the Ashes of Sacrifice teaches us the most profound lesson of all, that the echoes of conflict are not the sounds of war, but the voices of the future generations. They will never know the blinding light of the world ender, but they live every day with its shadow. They build their homes not on the ruins of their ancestors' mistakes, but on the bedrock of their final collective wisdom. Look upon this humble, healing world. It is the result of a soldier learning to forgive himself, a healer learning to embrace the secular, and a survivor choosing to lay down his own life for a world he never believed in. And in that quiet evening light, in the scent of growing pines and the subtle hum of a safe machine, we understand the true historical inheritance. The New World is not defined by the greatness of its power, but by the humility of its endurance.
Resolution and consequence. The Ash Heart conflict. For 50 years, the Custodians and the Consensus lived in a state of tense, necessary cooperation. Kalen provided stable shelter and purified water. Lyra provided sustainable food and basic medical knowledge. Zane's outriders provided the fuel that kept the lights on, scavenged aether cores. But a fragile peace, built on necessity, is always vulnerable to ideology. Kalen, exhausted by his guilt, began to push harder. He believed the world needed more than survival. It needed security. He initiated the Ash Heart Project, a plan to dig to the very core of the old Ithalen Central Database, buried beneath the epicenter of the final blast. His goal? To retrieve the master blueprints for the Aether Shield, a planetary defense system that, if completed, would permanently prevent any large-scale war. Lyra was horrified. Digging near the sacrifice site, the most unstable, magically tainted region on the planet, risked rupturing the delicate harmonic seal her archdruid had died to create. The seal was the only thing preventing the original world-ender energy from bleeding out and causing secondary cataclysms. The voices in her head screamed warnings of arrogance and repetition. This was the Ash Heart conflict, a war not of weapons but of philosophies. Security versus healing. Ithelian technology versus Eldorian preservation. Kalen pleaded, "We must have the shield, Lyra. We need to secure the future before the next fanatic rises. We can't rely on a generation of survivors to always make the right choice." Lyra countered, "The best choice is to learn humility, Kalen. Your shield is a return to the hubris that broke the world. We need patience, not perfection. You are digging up the graves of the fallen to build a cage for the living." The role of Zane. Zane, the pragmatist, saw only opportunity. Kalen offered immense payment in purified water and tools for his cooperation. Lyra offered nothing but dire warnings. Zane chose the profit, agreeing to use the volatile power of discard to bore the initial deep shaft for Kalen's excavation rig. The moment the Scard activated their channeled energy, the harmonic seal ruptured. It wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic explosion. It was a terrifying, slow release. A wave of raw etheric feedback surged from the depths, a deadly, corrupting energy that began to mutate the surrounding landscape, turning stone into pulsing, toxic crystal and twisting the minds of those it touched. The echoes, the souls inside Lyra, screamed in agony. The new world, only 50 years old, was dissolving. The sacrifice, the crucible of choice. In the face of the emerging disaster, the three leaders were forced to confront the true meaning of the past. Kalen finally saw the terrible irony of his quest for absolute security. His greatest effort to prevent catastrophe had only ensured its return. He rushed to the detonation point, abandoning the blueprints he sought, desperate to use his surviving Aethertech machinery to build a containment field. But the field required a massive, controlled power infusion, more than any surviving reactor could provide. Lyra arrived, the Viridia sprout clutched in her hands, the life magic in her blood surging. She knew the only way to reseal the rift was with a wave of power far greater than her Archdruid's final act. It required the extinction of the entire consensus, including the Archdruid's life force inside her. A final, definitive sacrifice. And Zane, standing on the edge of the escalating energy field, watched his scarred followers descend into madness, their volatile powers amplified and corrupted. He finally understood the value of what Kalen and Lyra had been protecting. Not just a world, but a sanity. The new world demanded one last great price. And this time, it was a choice, not a necessity. Kalen looked at Lyra. The containment field is stable, but I need a power source, Lyra. An unholy amount of energy. The raw aether cores won't last an hour against this. Lyra met his gaze, the wisdom of 1,000 souls in her eyes. No, Kalen, don't repeat the past. Don't build a temporary cage. We need a final seal. She raised the Viridia sprout, the single fragile seed of the future. I can do it, but I won't survive. I'll take the echoes with me, and the world will be quiet, but free. It will be the ultimate sacrifice. And Zane, the scavenger, the man who only believed in survival, saw a third option, a brutal compromise. He was the conduit, the bridge between Aethertech and life magic. He could absorb the chaotic etheric feedback and funnel it not into a seal, but into Kalen's containment field. It would be a temporary measure, a mortal shield, but it would buy them the time they needed to implement Kalen's original, more measured plan for a final mechanical seal. But the raw etheric feedback was pure poison. To draw it into his own scarred body was a death sentence, a complete molecular dismemberment. Kalen screamed, reaching for him. "Zane, stop! You'll be consumed!" Zane's last words, delivered with a grim, almost serene smile, were the most important philosophy of the New World. Ideal in remnants, Archon. And this remnant, this energy, is not worth building a future on. Let me be the final ash. He channeled the chaotic etheric feedback into Kalen's containment field, creating a temporary glowing shield of pure, borrowed power. The energy purified him as it destroyed him. He did not explode. He simply faded into a pillar of blinding white light, leaving behind no ash, no bone, only the sudden silence that Lyra had desperately sought. Zane's was the sacrifice of necessity. He gave up the single thing he valued, his survival, to save the ideals he had mocked. The long-term impact and character fates. Zane's sacrifice bought Kalen and Lyra 3 days. 3 days for Kalen to implement his final mechanical seal, a system that now hums silently beneath the ground. 3 days for Lyra to plant the Viridia sprout, allowing its gentle life magic to heal the scarred earth and soothe the residual echoes. Kalen, the architect of peace.